Welcome, GRD 121, Computer Graphics. We're going to be working on the flag exercise, and I've been doing this exercise since 2001, since 9/11, when everybody received flags with their newspaper, and I got one of them. I thought that would be a neat exercise to work on aligning and distributing and layering and creating things early on in the semester. So we're going to still do it, except we're doing it with Gravit. I've never done it with Gravit before. We've always done it with Illustrator, and I'll let it up to you to see if you think it's easier with Gravit compared to Illustrator, because I'll have you watch the old video to compare. Now, this is the finished product here. This is the flag. The page we're going to be working on is going to be 10 inches wide and is going to be 5.63, 5 5/8 inches high. And so you might not think a flag is that wide, but the one we got in the newspaper looked like this, so that's the way I do it that way. And obviously it has 13 stripes. We're only going to make 7 red ones, and we're going to make a blue rectangle, and we're going to make 50 stars. And here they are over here. And we're also going to put a border on it, so I'm going to just turn it off. There's the border. You can see a little thin black border around it. And here's the stars. There's the stars on and off. And here's the blue square on and off. And here's the stripes on and off. And that's all we're going to do. So we're only going to make 2 shapes, a rectangle for both the stripes and blue rectangle, and a star. And most of this is going to be kind of aligning and distributing. So we're going to do that and managing our layers so we can keep this thing fairly organized and easy to work with, since some things are on top of each other. Obviously the stripes are on the bottom, then the blue rectangle, then the stars on top. And part of this is just going to be aligning, so it won't be that hard to do. Now if you go to coursework, this will be under Unit 3. It's kind of spilling over to Unit 3. And I put this message here because I'm recording the video right now and I don't want people to start doing the assignment until I finish. And that's where you're going to turn it in with your link. But where you could go is under Documents and Resources. And I'll put this in the little blocks. I think that's a little easier to see. And it's going to be under Unit 2. I have no idea why it says Unit 1, and then it shows this stuff, and then it shows Unit 2 and 3. But anyway, we're going to go to Unit 3, and here's the PDF. And I'm just going to click on it and open it up. And hopefully this is okay, and this is updated for Gravit. But anyway, we're going to follow these instructions here, so I'm going to keep this open as I work on it. So I'll zoom in a little bit here to look at the instructions as I work on it. It says create a 10-inch wide document, 5.63, save the file. So we're going to follow these instructions as we do it. So I'm going to go here again. This is the finished product, so I'm going to close this up because this is the one I did as a sample. And it says I modified it. I guess I'll save it. And now we're going to create this from scratch. So once you log into your Gravit online, you're going to go to create. But before you do that, they don't have a custom size here. Just in case you're wondering, they don't have a custom. These are all preset sizes when we use letter, portrait, and landscape. So if you need a custom size, you could just do it up here. So I put in 10 and I put in 5.63. Now, after I did it the first time, it defaults to this. So keep in mind the next exercise that you do, it may come up with that size in there. And also make sure that you change this from pixels to inches. This has to be inches. We're working in inches right now. So we're working 10 inches by 5.63, which is actually 5.625, which is 5 5/8. And then I'll just hit create. Now we're going to make our flag the same size as our page. So we're just going to go right to the edges of the page. There's no margin that we're going to have on here. And we're going to start with our stripes, and then we're going to put our blue rectangle, and then we're going to do our stars. So let's check out our instructions here. Now I created it. It says save the flag as 4 flag. I didn't do that. And actually, I think it's 3. What is our assignment? The last one? Yeah, it's 3. So I got to change that. It's going to be 3. It's called Untitled right now. So we're going to go to File, Save to Cloud As, and it's taking a little while. And down here, I'm just going to call it 3-flag. Now, if you don't put the dash, I don't care. You could call it 3-flag. I'll just put 3-flag. And you don't have to put any extension because this is just working online in Gravit. Until you export it, you don't have to worry about an extension. It's just saving it as a Gravit file. So just 3-flag is fine. If you're working in Illustrator, you'd put the AI extension. So here it is. It's syncing right now, and we're going to get started. And let me just check my instructions for a couple here so I don't have to keep going back each time. So we're going to make a red rectangle. We're going to fill it with red. We're going to position it at the bottom of the page. Then we're going to make copies and make 5 more copies. So we have, I guess we're going to have 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom, and we're going to have 7 altogether. And then we're going to distribute these. So we should be able to run through all these steps in one shot. So this won't be that hard. Then we're going to put them into a layer. So I don't know if I put the instructions on here about calling layers. Now you could do this after the fact, but it says create a layer group. So let me do that. I'm going to create a layer group, and that's this thing here. Now remember, unlike Illustrator that just creates general layers and you work in layer 1 until you make a new layer, a layer group here isn't really necessary because each object that you make is its own layer. So if you draw something, you know, if you go here and you draw a rectangle, there's a rectangle, and it'll become a rectangle layer. So you don't have to put it in a layer or on a layer. I'm going to delete that. But I'm going to make a layer group, and I think that makes more sense because it's more organized. So I'm going to make a layer group, and I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to call it stripes because you can figure out what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all my stripes in there. So that's where my stripes are going to go, inside that layer group. Then I'll have one for stars as well. And I can make that right now too, if I want to make one for stars. Now I'm not going to make my stars yet, but I have one for stars. I'm not going to need one for blue rectangle because there's only one shape. And for border. So those are the only ones that'll have multiple objects inside them. But on the stripes layer, I'm going to draw a stripe. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, Control minus or Command minus, and I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw it as wide as the page. And you should see little guides pop up, so you shouldn't it shouldn't be hard to get right to the edge of the page. So making it 10 inches should be easy. So there it is. It's a gray rectangle, and if you want to make it red, remember you go down here to the fill and just click in the middle there, and just use a standard red is fine. And just click off. If you want this thing to go away, just kind of click off. So there it is. It's red, and there's no border because you can see there's nothing in here. So it only has the add button. There's no border on here. That's what we want. And I'm going to move it down to the bottom, and it'll snap to the bottom. Although if you don't move it to the bottom, we could use the tool up here that aligns to top or lines to bottom. But before I do that, I'm going to change the size of this. Now this is saying it's 10 inches wide by 0.7365. Now, if we look over here, we're going to make our stripes 0.43. We're going to make them 0.43, and that was just by dividing them up by 13. That's how we got 0.43, whatever our size was. So I did the math for you. So down here, these little things keep popping up. Down here under height, I'm going to click here. Now, be careful. This is going to be more relevant when we make the stars, but you see this thing here? It says keep ratio. Now, if I change the height right now, and I put in 0.43, and I hit enter, it changed the ratio because it's locked in. When that little thing is in there, I don't even know what you call that, but when that little thing is kind of solid in the center there, that means it's keeping the ratio. And I'll undo that. I'll do Command Z or Control Z. I'll undo that, and I'll turn it off. Now it's off. Now it's not locking in. Now I can make the height and width different sizes. When you want to keep it in proportion, for example, when you make your star and you make it perfect, but it's really big, you're going to want to make it in proportion and make it smaller. So we'll use that then. But right now, leave this open. So we're not going to keep the ratio. We're going to go over here and make it 0.43 so that they could have a different width and height. And there it is. Now you could either drag it to the bottom of the page or you could use align to bottom. Look how easy that is. Now we're going to use the drag copy method. And again, we're on our pointer and we're just going to hold either Option or Alt, depending if you're on Option if you're on Mac, Alt if you're on Windows. And I'm just going to make a copy, and you should be able to just drag it right to the top. You shouldn't even have to use align top or anything, and it should already be centered. So now we have 2, and we need 5 more because we're going to have 7 stripes that are red because we're just going to leave the white in between. We're not going to have white stripes. We're just going to have red stripes. So I'm just going to use my drag copy method again and drag, drag, drag. Doesn't matter how far apart they are. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all together there should be 7, and if that gets off a little bit, you can see how that's off. That's not a big deal, because then I could highlight all of these. If you get the alignment off, you could align center, and then they'll all align. Now, they're not in the center of the page right now, so I'll just move them over. Now they're in the center of the page, but they're all lined together. Now, what they're not is they're not distributed. They need even space in between them. And watch how easy this is. We go to the distribute vertical right here, so vertically they get distributed almost like blinds, almost like if you turned blinds so you could have a little light and see out. We're going to distribute them, and look at that, it made them all even based on where it starts and where it ends. That's why you want to make sure you have the first one and the last one in good position. So now they're done. So you don't have to do anything with them. You don't even have to group them. But what we are going to do is over here in your layer palette, you see how they're all selected right now. When they're all, you could select them here, and all 7 are selected. And when it's gray here, it means they're selected here. I'm going to drag them into my stripes layer group. So these objects, they're outside of the group because they're on the same indent level. I'm going to hold down and drag them in, and you should see like a green plus sign. Now, I'm not sure if it's like that on Windows, but you want to go right on top and leave go. And then you should see a little arrow here, and you see they're indented, and then all those rectangles are inside there. Those are the stripes. And now, instead of having a bunch of layers, we could just lock this, and we're done with it. We're done with the stripes. And why do we lock it? So we don't accidentally select the stripes when we're doing things on top of it. So that's locked. So we're locking that layer group. And what we're going to do next is the blue rectangle, which is really easy. So if I keep going here, blue square, look at the 2 instructions here. We're going to make it 4¼ inch wide and down to the 4th red stripe or the 7 stripe total. So that's all we're going to do. So I'm not even giving you a height on this. You're just going to go across 4¼ and down 1, 2, 3, 4, down to right about here. So it's going to be kind of right about here that we're going to do it. And it'll make its own layer, its own object layer. So again, I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'll just start in a corner at 0, 0. And let me move down a little bit. And I'll go right at 0, 0, and I'll just go down 4 red stripes. And I'm going to go over, and I could even go over and look at the number over there. You see where it says size 4.255? I could go over there. Now it's not perfect, but I could get it pretty close. Now it's gray right now, so let me go make it blue. Just a standard blue is fine. And then I'll click off, and then click on it again. And if you want it exactly 4.25, just double click on it. And then remember, nothing in there. Make sure that's empty, and make it 4.25. And if you want to zoom in, just to see what it looks like, you can see if I go down here, it probably needs to go down just a little bit to cover over that red stripe. And there it is. So it ended up being about 3.02. I could have put that on the sheet, but I didn't. But that's about what it comes out to. So it's 4¼ wide, and it's 4 stripes down, which is about 3.02. So that looks pretty good. We're done with that. And you can go over here and just name it blue rectangle. I guess I could have just put blue in front of it instead of retyping rectangle. But it's blue rectangle, and it should be on top of the stripes. And then since I'm done with it, I might as well lock that too. So I'm going to hover over here until you see the lock, and then click on it and lock it. Now the stars, now I think I have this in a different order on the instructions, but right away, you know the stars are going to be on top. Let's drag that layer above the rectangle so that it goes stars, blue rectangle, stripes, because that's the order, because we're going to be doing stars up here. And we're going to draw 1 star first. So let's check out our instructions. Here's the stars. Now there's more to do with stars, but actually they're not very hard. We're going to make 1 star and hold our shift key when we create it. It'll be gray, and then we'll make it white, and then we're going to do some of this stuff here. Now I'm not even going to go through the instructions because I'll just show you what to do. So I'm going to go back to Gravit, and if you haven't saved for a while, you might want to hit this thing. Let it sync up. And like a lot of software programs, when it's saved, it won't show an asterisk on it. Because right now it's showing like it was showing a little asterisk on it, and when it's not, that means it's saved right now. So don't forget to save often, and you could kind of zoom in a little bit here. You don't have to see your whole flag. Let's see where I am. That's about right. That's pretty good right now as far as where I'm zoomed in. I made my zoom view on my browser a little bit bigger so you could see these icons. And when I record a Gravit video, just going over some things, I'll do that too. Because I thought the first video I did, it was a little harder to see some of this stuff, even when I went through and watched the video. So hopefully this will help a little. So we're going to draw a star. And this will be way easier than Illustrator, I think. So we're going to go in our polygon tools. Now a star is kind of like a polygon. It's multi-sided, except it has like an inset, outset. It goes in and out. It has points on it. So I'm going to go down to star, and I'm just going to drag a star. Now, when you first do it, it goes around, it spins around like that. So if you hold shift, now if you go that way, it's going to make it on an angle. It goes in 45-degree angles. But if you kind of turn it so it's straight at you, and there's a point on top and 2 points on the bottom, and you kind of zoom in and zoom out when you're with your mouse, when you're creating it, leave it like that. Now you might say, well, it doesn't look right yet, and it doesn't. That's okay. And leave go of your mouse first, and then leave go of the shift key. So there's our star. Now I would say this star is a slumped shoulder star. You see how the shoulders are kind of slumped like that? We want them straight across. Now in Illustrator, you have to hold a bunch of keys to do that. You have to hold like 3 keys while you're doing it, which is sometimes hard to do. And what you can do here, this is really easy. Although the terminology doesn't make sense. It says size 50%, and it has something to do with the math. But while this is selected, if you just go over here, and I just kind of estimate it, if you make it 39% down here, and this is in appearance. Notice we're in appearance, and I made it too much. Let me make sure I go 39% and click. You can see they look pretty straight. And this is in the appearance palette. And you could put more points on here if you want. You could do that, although I only want 5. And there it is. I'll put it back to the way it was. So anyway, that's 39%, and there's 5 points on the star. And actually, when I started messing with points, it went into that pointer. It went into my sub-select, which we'll use, but I'll go back now. So there's 1 white star. And now that we have 1, it's going to be fairly easy to make 50 of those. As long as you make your star correct. as long as you have straight shoulders by putting that at 39%. Now we're going to change the size, okay? Now, even though it says size there, we're going to go to size up here. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to click in the middle and make sure we constrain it. We don't want to stretch it or do anything, so we want whatever we put in for the width, everything else to be the same. Now, you might think a star would be perfectly even all around, but it's not quite. So I'm going to go here in width and put in 0.3. And it should be around almost 0.29 or 0.28 or something over there for the height. So it's not quite a perfect, almost like a perfect square if you think of its bounding box that goes around here. Let me zoom in here a little bit, and there's my star. And this bounding box, again, it's 0.3 wide and it's about 0.28 and a little bit high. So, but that looks good. That's what I want. So I'll zoom out, even though it's going to be tiny. And again, if you need to scroll your window, hold your space bar and move it in here. And I need to zoom out a little bit more. And remember, you could always hide one of these things. If you need more room, you could always go here and go View and hide your layers or something. Then I have more room here to work. So if I wanted to zoom in a little bit more, then I could kind of work over here, yet I could still see these tools because I'm going to be using these tools. So that's a good way to do that. And it's very easy to bring the other thing back. So we have to know the math here of how many stars we have. So if we go down here, we have our white star. Now, we didn't group it yet or anything inside the stars layer group. Number 18 here, I don't know if I'll change that. We can put all the stars in the layer group later, or you could do it now. I think they'll stay in there. Let me go back here and go View, Layers Panel. And I think if it's called a polygon right now. Now, let me call it Star. And let me put it in the stars group. So it's in there, and if you want to check, just open it up, and there it is. It's called star, but it's a polygon. So we're inside there right now, and then I'll hide under View, I'll hide the Layers panel again. So there's my star, and hopefully when we make more stars, they'll stay in that group. That's I guess why I put it there. Going back here, that's what they're talking about, the layers group, and we already changed the physical size of it. Whatever order you do this in is fine. So we're going to position the first star in the upper left, and then we're going to make 5 additional stars, so we have 6 going across. And then we're going to center them and distribute them. And let me just do this. I'm trying to read this as a pain. So we're going to need 6 across. So we're going to have 9 rows of 6, which is 54. And then we're going to delete a couple. So I'm going to drag 1, just like I did with the stripes. I'll put 1 over here. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 altogether. So I have 6 going across. Now they're kind of up and down and they're not centered. But what you want to be concerned about is where the first and last is. And they look pretty good. And then what I'll do is I'll highlight all 6 of them, and I'm going to align them up and down. So I'll use this tool to align their centers up and down. So kind of like on a horizontal bar, going through there like a shish kebab. We want to go right through there, and so we're going to use this tool right here. And that'll align them up and down, and then we're going to distribute them this way so the same amount of space is in between all the stars. And they look good. And guess what we're going to do now? We're going to group them so we don't mess them up. And we're going to use this button here to group them. So now we have like a star group. So if we click off and click on, it selects all 6 stars. And they're perfect stars. It's going to be easy to just make the rows after this. And let me just check my layers panel. And you can see everything is inside of that stars layer group. So we're good. And it's called a group right now of stars. But you could leave it that name. That's fine. So we know they're all in there. And I'm going to hide this again. And what we're going to do now, and as long as I could see my whole rectangle here, and again, that's why it's good to lock the rectangle, the blue rectangle, so you don't do this. I'm going to drag copy, and we're going to have 9 rows of stars. So I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key, and I'm going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they almost barely might not fit, but that's okay. So there's 9 rows of stars, so that means if you know your math, that's 54 stars. We have too many stars. Now, what you could do, even before you do anything else, you could highlight the groups. Now, we're highlighting 9 groups. We're not highlighting 54 stars, we're highlighting 9 groups. And if you want to distribute these, we'll distribute them just like the stripes. So we could use this over here. And now they're even up and down. Now, the problem is we have extra stars. And if you look at the sample, I'll go here. If you look at the sample, you see they alternate. There's 6, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6. So we have to delete a star on alternate rows. That's what we're going to do. And that's really easy to do in Gravit. We're going to click on here. That selects the group. And click again that selects the star. And what do you think we're going to do with that star? We're going to hit our delete key, delete. And then skip one, go here, click a second time, delete. Click a second time, delete. Click a second time, delete. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't look too good. But now, once we align them, they're going to align evenly. So I'm going to highlight all these stars again. And again, not all the stars. We're only highlighting, if you think about it, we're highlighting 9 rows. And the in-between rows aren't as long. So if we center them, now keep in mind, if you were like, oh, I'll just do this, they're going to center them all on one point up and down. So we don't want to do that. So I'll undo. We want to center them this way. Like on a line going like this. We want to center them this way so they're all centered. So the long ones go to the edges and the shorter ones come in from either side. So we're going to use this to center them. And look at that. Looks awesome. Easy to do too. So that looks pretty good. And if you ever didn't like the way they were, you can go and do that again. Like if you wanted to bring them in a little bit more, you'd still have to highlight all of these and you would just distribute them again and you'd center them again. And then you can move the whole group down if you want. If it turned out you didn't distribute these correctly, you're going to have to do that again. But as long as you distribute them, they should all line up nicely. And that looks pretty good. We got 50 stars. And let's go look at our layers now. Now that I zoomed out, I'll go to my layers panel. And let me close this up so I can see what's going on here. There's all groups of stars here, so they're hard to see what's going on. I'll just close up all these groups. So there's all these groups inside of my stars layer, but look at that. Once I close up my stars layer, everything's nice and neat. And if I use my eyeball, all my stars are on that layer group. So it's a really nice organizing feature. And my blue rectangle, there's my blue rectangle, and there's my stripes. So everything looks good. I can even lock my stars if I want. If I didn't want to do anything else with my stars, if I'm done, I might as well lock it. Now the last thing we're going to do, and this is real easy, we're just going to put a border around the whole page. We're just going to make a rectangle. So I'll just make a rectangle. I'll start up here at 0, 0, and just make a rectangle. And it should kind of snap to the edge. And it's filled with gray, so it's covering up our whole flag right now. But if you want to get rid of a fill, do you remember how to get rid of a fill? Use the trash can here. Get rid of fill, that means no fill. In Illustrator, they have little color things that have like a slash through it that means no fill. But in Gravit, they use the trash can to delete the fill. So I have no fill, and I have no border, but I want a border. So I'm going to add a border by using the plus sign. And I'll just make it 2 point. I'll just go up a little. That's 8. I don't want it that much, so I'll double click in here because it's very sensitive when you use that up and down slider. And I'll just put in 2 and I'll hit enter or return. And there it is. And you don't have to lock that either. So that's just on top of everything. And for whatever reason, if it's not on top, you drag the layer on top. So it goes border, which is the black border here. That's 2 point black. And then the stars, which are those things. Then the blue rectangle. There it is. And then finally the stripes. There's the stripes. So that's all you have to do. That's it for your flag exercise. I'm going to have you watch the video doing it in Illustrator so that you can compare and see what you think's easier. I won't give you my opinion yet because that'll be a discussion question. And when you're done here, make sure you first save. It should be syncing over here. You should not see the asterisk there. So it's still saving, so I'll wait a second. This is why some glitchiness sometimes happens, because if it's not saved, and you share it, it might not share the version that had the final things that you did. Because someone had sent me one that didn't have some object on the page that they did on one of the earlier exercises. And it's possible that it didn't get saved yet. So for some reason, this isn't saving. It's like kind of holding here. And obviously that's the internet and all kinds of things going on. But I'll wait here a second. So now it's syncing. So it just waited a little bit here. It had a little delay, and that's okay. So I'm glad I showed you that because you may be having that too. So make sure it syncs. Because that's why some things, if you send me something and there's something not there, you may have shared it and you thought you were done, but it didn't sync yet. So it's going to share the synced file. So I'm kind of glad that happens. I'm not sure why it's taking a while here to do that, but I don't want to share it until it's perfectly synced. All right, it took a little bit, but now it's actually synced. So there's no asterisk there. Now it's saved and now you can share it. So if anybody ever had an issue with something not being updated, make sure you don't see an asterisk there when you share it. So now it's saved, it's synced, it's good, even though it took a little bit. Now I'll hit share, and now I'll copy this, and I'll go back to my Warren. Now I got logged out here, and that's going to happen to you as well. And I'm going to go to GRD 121. I have a CSC 121 as well, so that gets me very confused. And I'm going to go to coursework, and I'm going to go to Gravit flag, and it'll be open for you to do it. And you're just going to add a comment. You're going to insert link. You're going to paste what you just copied, your share copy, or your shared URL you're going to paste in there. And make sure you do this. Make sure that you do new window. Some people didn't do that, and it's a little bit of a pain when I click on your link and it takes me out of my warn. With Gravit, it's hard to go back. When I hit the back button, sometimes it's very difficult to do that. Not that it's the end of the world, but it just helped me out here. And make sure you choose new window and hit OK and hit save. And then you're done with that. And like I said, I'm going to have a discussion question that'll have you watch the Illustrator version of this exercise and just kind of compare it and see what you think's easier, just to get your impression, if you've worked on Illustrator or if you haven't. So that's the end of exercise 3, flag.